Welcome to the Planet 63 Virtual Business Matchmaking Show, the next evolution of discovering Philippine and U.S.-made products and services. This is the show that helps create global sales opportunities and bring Philippine and U.S.-made products and services go from local to global. Thank you for watching the show, and now please welcome the host of Planet 63 from Local to Global, Ferdinand B. Soriano.
Hi everyone! Magandang umaga ho sa inyong lahat. Welcome to Planet 63 from Local to Global, the Experts Edition. Now, why do we call it the Experts Edition, right? On our regular show, the way it works is all about the guest presenters. They talk about their product, and they're looking for tips and potential connections with buyers like wholesalers, distributors, and online retailers. Now, most of the time, those tips and suggestions and feedbacks are given by the panel experts on the show. Now, on this second episode of this edition of the From Local to Global, we wanted to focus on the panel experts, and we wanted to give our audience a chance to get to know who the panel experts are, give them an idea of their caliber, their experience, of the experts on the show. And on the second episode, like I said, of Planet 63's From Local to Global edition, we have a prominent attorney who specializes in intellectual property. And before we introduce him, let me introduce my co-host on the show. And he is from GMB Franchise and also the Philippine franchise guru himself. Now, please welcome Boots Bartolome.
Hey guys, how are you? Good evening, Ferdinand, and good morning to all kababayans here in Manila, Philippines. Yes, how are you, Ferdy?
I am good. I mean, all things considered, I'm always grateful with everything that's going on in the world. We were talking offline, and we were talking about what's happening here in the U.S. as well as in the Philippines. To me, I just keep trying to push forward. I understand all those things are happening, but we need to keep moving forward because that's what life is about. That's just how I see everything.
Exactly, and we really need collaboration at this point. I mean, the journey, the collaboration, and again, making the tie-up, the local to global. All right.
Well, I'm hoping that our show will continue to do that. But again, this edition of the Local to Global, the Expert Edition, is all about our panel experts. I mean, they're amazing. We're very lucky to have them on our show. So let me go ahead and get to the panel experts of the legal department of the Philippines from Local to Global show. Now, let me go ahead and do a proper introduction of this gentleman. Now, he's a global student. He was a global student, I should say, who attended schools in Europe, United States, and the Philippines. He's affiliated with the American Bar Association, Integrated Bar Association, Philippine Bar Association, Intellectual Property Association, and the Licensing Executive Society International. He is also a certified public accountant and also a sought-after lecturer on the subject of intellectual property. Please welcome attorney Ferdinand M. Negre. Let me bring him on to the show. Hi, Ferdy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And thank you for the very kind introduction. That's very nice of you. Tokayo Ferdinand.
No problem, Ferdy. I have to tell you, I just love your name. Can you guess why?
I can.
I hope
you guys really, I can't imagine. The alphabet has so many letters, but how can your parents just say, choose Ferdinand? Is it Ferdinand Magellan or?
I don't know. I mean, you were making
amazing.
A joke. I know you were making a joke earlier, right, about F1, F2. So okay. So
yeah, because I might be confusing myself and say Ferdinand Soriano, Ferdinand. I mean, just like having kids, you have too many kids, you just say F1, F2, F3, F4, F5. That's it.
No. Obviously, as you can see, Ferdinand Negre is more handsome, so I'll give it to him today because he's our guest.
Thank you. I'll take that. Ferdinand, do you get to be called Ferdinando or Fernando by your Spanish-speaking friends? I do. I do get that a lot.
when you grow up here in the U.S., you've been called so many names, different, very, variation of it, and you just learn to just respond, yes, yes, yes,
Yeah.
and just ignore it, just whatever, Ferdinando, whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway, all right. So why don't we have a relatively amount short of time, and I really want everybody to know how amazing you are, Ferdy, Attorney Ferdy, and to me, I want to go ahead and devote a lot of the time on the show, and we have so much to talk about, but little time to do that. So why don't we get started with our first question? Okay.
Please.
Now, let me go ahead with a little bit of a tie-in, so of how you got into the show in terms of why you even bothered. So let me go ahead and ask you that question first. Now, what persuaded you to join the panel experts of Planet 63's from local to global, Ferdy?
Oh, that's a very good question, Ferdinand. Every time I do this, I do my own background checks, due diligence, if you may, and I find this show very helpful to people, to
Mhm.
business people, and I like that because I like helping people as well. And there's the connection. As far as I'm concerned, you help people. I'd like to collaborate with you in helping people.
Well, again, we are very fortunate to have you on the show. But Boots, do you have any comment? Did you twist his arm to be on the show? I think you twisted his arm to be on the show, right?
Ferdy F2, Tony Ferdy, is somebody I really have met so many years ago, and I always respect his time because he's so busy. I tell you, you can catch him giving lectures in the school university. Even during before the pandemic, but. And this is one thing that I was crossing my fingers, because my wife and I were saying, Ferdinand Soriano needs a legal. I said, wow, there's only one person I know, and that is Ferdinand Negre. And true enough, I had to pray. Ferdinand Negre, you better answer me, because I will be embarrassed before your F2, F1. And true enough, he said, a pleasure. Oh my gosh.
No,
A
you're a kind
pleasure.
gentleman, if not a fool, Ferdy, for being on the show. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All kidding aside, thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm
Obviously,
humbled.
your presence creates legitimacy in the show, and that's exactly what we're just trying to do. Okay, moving on. I'm a big fan of Origin, right? So my next question for you is that how did you decide? Let's go back to that. How did you get into?
Mhm.
Did you decide to become a professional in the legal industry, the legal world?
Oh, okay. From humble beginnings, Tokayo
Sure,
Ferdy.
please.
I grew up in a poor family back in the province of Cagayan. Yeah. And I was the youngest in the family. So I got bullied, typical Filipino family. Uh, I got pushed around. So I pushed back. And meaning I talk back. I cannot like physically push back. So, yeah, I was frail, tiny, thin guy. So I talk back, and as they always say, pilosopo, or you reason out, and then you got to be a good a lawyer material, and that lawyer thing grew up in me, and unconsciously. And then when I was in college, I was looking for it, and then I worked for it. All the way, I was a working student, and why IP by accident, I must say, because I needed to work to sustain myself in law school, to pay for my tuition. And luckily, I have a cousin who works with the Bureau of Patents at that time, now the Intellectual Property Office, who told me that the head, the Attorney Sapalo, was looking for a student in Ateneo who would want to help him out. And I volunteered. So there you go. Even when I was still in law school, I was already immersed with intellectual property. And that's how it started. And I needed help all along. And this mentor of mine, Attorney Spalo, gave me a break for studies in the U.S., intellectual property, and that's where I got my Master of Intellectual Property in Franklin Pierce in the U.S. So since then, IP was in my blood.
Well, that's something. I mean, Butch, you want to chime in before I say? Because I can talk for a while, so you just want to make sure I give you an opportunity to ask.
But
Attorney
I admire. I've heard a lot of people. I've met a lot of people who work from the bottom up. All because of something. I mean, the persistence, the discipline, and really the challenge within themselves. I mean, not comparing with other people, and that's something I think I admire with Ferdy. It doesn't compare with other people. The way I can get back to you is I show myself that I will be one day be somebody. And I
Well,
think that's what I admire in Ferdy.
Well, I really resonated what you said, Ferdy, about when you were a kid, because if you didn't say that was happening to you, I would have said, were you spying on me? What do you know about me? Because that's how I was. And sometimes great things come out of those moments in your life. And again, either somebody just guided you and you got to that point, but there was something about you because of your childhood that got you wanting to go in the profession. And I appreciate that, because a lot of things could happen on the negative side too. You turn that sort of a challenge to something more positive. And that, with that being said, you sort of touched on it already, but I wanted you to expand, because when I was a kid and I think about being an attorney, I was stereotypical in terms of what I thought. Like, I wanted to be an attorney for criminal law. So my question to you is, how did you end up becoming such an expert in intellectual property? Even though I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but just kind of expand it a little bit, because there are probably a lot of people watching us right now who's tuned into that. Because right now, with this day and age, with all the different scenarios in business and online, those things are very important. So tell us why intellectual property.
yeah, thank you, Freddie. As I mentioned, it initially started like an accident because I needed to work to support myself to law school. And so I got into the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines working, right? And then after that, I went to a law school in the US. It's the Franklin Pierce Law Center at that time. And I thought of focusing really on intellectual property. It's like any other company, you have to find your niche. And that's what I did. And I love learning, I have this philosophy of learning is a lifelong process. So I continue to teach myself. And one thing that helped me do that, keep myself at the top of the game, so to speak, is teaching. So if you teach, and then if you're teaching good students, you have to keep yourself abreast. You have to learn before they learn. How can you impart something that you don't know? So let's put it that way. And then also, I mentioned to you that I got help along the way. I always ask for help, and I got help. And so that's another philosophy of me, paying it forward. You got help, you got somewhere, and then you help others go somewhere as well. And I like to believe that I'm helping my students, learn something, inspire my students, and that I love to do. Does that, help you with your question, Freddie?
Yeah, I like to always just know what drives a person to do because to me, I'm always putting myself in that situation. If I'm going to hire you, I want to know how good you are, and I can only tell if you're passionate about what you do, because then if you are, then you go the extra mile of trying to find out certain things, especially when in business. So that's important to me. So I'm always asking you these questions from a perspective of a particular client, because that's what's important. So I'm always about understanding that. So I don't know about Boots, but whether he cares or not. So, but to me, that's how I look at it. That's why I look at that.
But I'm so touched also when you mentioned that paying it forward. A lot of people are using that hashtag now for paying forward. I mean, give back what you have learned. Give back. Try to be part of the community. And really, whatever we can share, we don't have to share money, but can share talent. You can share assistance. It's just like what we're doing here, local to global. We're inspiring entrepreneurs both from the U.S. and the Philippines, and
Right.
really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And really, we are the light, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we are the light. We're trying to link in people with experts like Ferdinand. Oh my God, Ferdinand! My tongue, my tongue, my tongue. Ferdinand Negre.
We call that
We're
conclusive
gonna
similarity in trademark law.
yeah, we're gonna have a good time just with that name, and I'm actually enjoying myself saying it, and I'm actually calling somebody Ferdinand because it's weird. It was a weird experience for me because I don't know too many Ferdies, even though technically that's a somewhat of a common name in the Philippines. We're in the Filipino community, but this part that I want to do now is that I want to turn over the questions to Boots because
Hmm.
I have some other questions, but it's going to be more of again origin story, why you're doing what you're doing, because that's what triggers me. But at the same time, we also want the audience to know your expertise. So I'm going to sort of give this the microphone, so to speak, to Boots and ask the rest of the questions there.
Yeah, but Attorney Ferdy, I think we have to stress the fact that being entrepreneurs, you build a brand, right?
Mhm.
And building the brand is not necessarily just launching the business and that's it. I mean, you have a good name, but where does now your expertise come in, and why? Because a lot of entrepreneurs I meet and say, oh, we have registered it with the Department of Trade and Industry, which is DTI in the Philippines. Is that something that I should be very concerned?
Okay, thank you, Boots. That's a very good question to ask. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, business people that I've talked to, that's a recurring question. That I have already registered my business name with the Department of Trade and Industry, or my company name with the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. Why do I need that? Okay, let me give you the distinction between the two. Let me share with you this distinction. And of course, our friends, our listeners here, there's a whale of a distinction, as I must say. Registering your business name with the DTI or your company name with SEC is regulatory in character. What do I mean by that? You're required to do that. You cannot do business without doing that, especially in the Philippines, or I am referring to the Philippines. But trademark, which represents your brand, in fact, we equate your brand with trademarks. These are your assets, these are your property, and it's up to you to protect this property. The government will not come and protect your car, for example. So uh, it's optional, but it is very, very important to protect your trademark. Why do I say that? You mentioned, Boots, that your trademark is you use that for your advertisement, for your promoting your product. I don't think I cannot think of any other way where you can promote your product without your trademark. So it's essential in promoting your product. Number two, as I mentioned, it's your asset. It's your property. That's why it's called intellectual property. The difference is, and this is what I want to share with startups or with businesses, is that you buy a car, 20,000 US dollar car, you protect it, right? Especially it's very new, you don't want scratches on it. Yet it depreciates over time. Your trademark, your brand, it appreciates over time. So why don't you protect your brand? That is very, very important. Imagine someone taking your brand, your trademark in other jurisdictions. That's a no-no when you want to go global. When you want to go global, from local to global, you really have to protect your trademark. And you know what? You can even go to the bank and take out the loan, use your trademark as your collateral. Let me give you an example. Last year, the most valuable brand in the world is, can you guess which one? It's Amazon. Apple was
Wow.
relegated to number 3. It's now
What's
Amazon
number one?
2020.
What's number one?
Number
Amazon?
Amazon, it is Amazon, to the tune of 220 billion US dollars. That's the value of the brand alone, minus the brick and mortar physical assets. So Amazon can go to the bank and take out a loan up to 220 billion US dollars. That's the value of a brand. That's a value of a trademark. That's why I'm always telling people, I always tell people, you have to protect your trademark. So perhaps the question is, how do you do that? How do you go on protecting your trademark? And here's the tip. It's registration. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's not required on your part, but you have to do it to protect your asset. You have to invest on your asset, as we always say. Right, Boots?
Yeah, but attorney, one of the things that I have encountered is that okay, I want to bring my brand to the U.S. Okay,
Mm.
but I have registered already in the Philippines. Is that something that I can be proud of and say go to the U.S. and say, hey, I'm registered? Is that valid? Does it mean that bottom line, if I register in the Philippines, I'm also registered in other countries?
Oh no, Boots. That's another misconception on the part of the business people, our friends in the business world, because, you know, uh, first, I got my business name registration already, and I mentioned no, that doesn't count insofar as IP assets concerned. Number two, I got it in the Philippines. I went to the IPO, the Bureau of Trademarks, and got a registration. Okay, that's fine. You're protected in the Philippines. You're not protected in the US. Why is that? This is what we call the principle of territoriality, Boots. What does that mean? You're protected only in the country where you are registered. There's no such thing as international trademark registration. You
Mm-hmm.
have to register in the US as well. And the good thing, I don't know if it's good or bad, you have to go to the US to register. We have different rules. So you have to look into each country for these different rules. I tell
Oh,
you
wait,
one
wait. You
example.
mentioned the different rules.
Okay,
Can you cite an example? What are, let's say, like in the
I'll give you two.
Philippines? Oh yeah. Okay.
I'll give you two, Boots. First is
Okay.
in the Philippines, for a trademark to be registered, it must be a visible sign. It must be something you can see. That is not required in the US. We call what we call non-traditional marks,
Mm-hmm.
wherein you can even register your distinctive smell or your distinctive touch of the product. So imagine, let me give you an example. Imagine your VCO product. It's
Yeah.
got that distinctive apple smelling VCO. It's not common for a VCO to have that smell. So people will now recognize your VCO as apple smelling. That is a trademark in the US, not in the Philippines, not yet, because our law provides that it must be a visible sign. Number two
Mm-hmm.
example, in the Philippines, it's the first to register system. What do I mean by that? The first to go to the Bureau of Trademarks will get the registration.
Okay.
In the US, it's the first to use system, the first to use the mark in federal commerce has the right over the mark. So
Oh.
we have two different systems. And then you need to be aware of that. If you are a local businessman wanting to go global, the US and other countries as well, you have to be aware of these differences, of this need to register your trademarks.
We have been talking about Madrid Protocol. What is really Madrid Protocol?
That's a very good question, Boots. yes, we are a member of the Madrid Protocol. It's called the Madrid System of Registration. The funny thing about it is it's not a registration system. It's a filing system. It allows a Filipino businessman to file a trademark application here in the Bureau of Trademarks of the Philippines that is effective. The filing is effective in 108 member countries of the Madrid Protocol or the Madrid system, including the US. So let me explain that further. You file an application here. You choose which countries you want to go to, you want to penetrate, and then your filing system, your filing date in the Philippines, I mentioned first to file, right, Boots?
Yeah.
So your filing date in the Philippines is the same filing date in all of those countries that you have chosen. So it facilitates the filing of trademark application. It does not grant registration. What happens is those countries that you have chosen, the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property International Bureau, will send those applications to each countries, and each country will have to examine under their own laws because it's territoriality that I mentioned. So it's a very good thing. I pushed that when I was consulted. We went around ASEAN promoting the Madrid Protocol because it helps MSMEs go global. It facilitates your protection over your trademark registration.
Well, Ferdinand, we're getting hot on this item. Can we have a break?
Yeah, no, seriously. There are so many. Why would anyone want to not consult with you? I mean, it's the little nuances that could get you in trouble. I mean, somebody would go, "Oh, what the heck? Let's just do it." But sometimes those little things that are the detail part, yeah, sometimes people may not pay attention, but those are the things that actually can make or break a business if you don't pay attention to it. It's the little details, especially like you said, when you're going, from local to global. So, we're going to go on a break just so that we can sort of regroup, but I want to continue that and sort of bring the conversation around more so back to more of that, but more like revisit some of the ones, like, for example, you talked about Aldrich, right? Because there's a lot of companies that I'm starting to get that, this gentleman, Aldrich from Mr. N, was from in the US. He was on the show like last week, and there's going to be a lot of other people wanting to go, and they're into that same type of industry. So I want to sort of go back into that a little bit. So if you don't mind, after we do a quick break or a good break, we'll go ahead and go into that a little bit more. Is that okay, Ferdy?
Yes, it's perfect. I don't mind at all.
Okay. All right, Boots. Let me go ahead and do a quick break, okay?
Okay.
So MCT is what you need, and what you need is MCT. So MCT is what you need, and what you need is enjoy health. need is enjoy health.
All right, everybody, and we're back. Thank you for watching that commercial from one of our supporters, Enjoy Health. Speaking of that, that's going to be a great product here in the U.S., and we're also consulting with them in terms of trying to make sure that we take care of the intellectual property part. So with that being said, Attorney Ferdy, let's go ahead and continue with what you were saying earlier. I know that there's a lot of nuances when it comes to going from local to global, all the different things that people need to watch out. So with that being said, maybe to sort of cap off that comment, what could they do and how should they look for someone that would help them and make sure that they're being held properly to make sure those things are covered? So can you maybe continue with what you were saying, but then touch on that?
Right. Yes, Ferdy. Looking for someone for help, you always have to look for professional help. As I mentioned, we help each other, we collaborate. And the tip that I would like to share there is that you want help on intellectual property, you get to hire someone knowledgeable or specializing in that area. Why do I say that? You want to go to a doctor. You have an eye problem. You're not going to a doctor specializing in heart problem. So it's the same thing. In law, legal services, you go to a specialized lawyer on that subject. So there are IP lawyers, and there are a number in the Philippines if you're coming into the Philippines. In the US, there are a lot of IP lawyers. And just make sure that the IP lawyer, that lawyer you're talking to is someone knowledgeable or has expertise on intellectual property. It doesn't have to be someone that has the best or it's the best. Just make sure that he has knowledge on that specific area in law. You also mentioned that about Aldrich.
Yeah, I mean, before we got into that, I wanted to make sure
All
that
right.
maybe Butch wanted to chime in on that if he had anything to say about that part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think Aldrich, who was our guest of VG Wellness, is really so serious, dead serious. In fact, he was communicating with me the other day, and really how to bring in the products and how to bring in the VG Wellness in the Philippines. So what's the first step, Attorney Negre?
Okay. First is I believe I mentioned about the need to get an FDA approval, or what we call a certificate of product registration, considering that it's a food supplement that he's bringing in the Philippines. The next step is uh, intellectual property. So you have your company name. I think it's VG Wellness, a beautiful logo of Aldrich.
Mm-hmm.
That's the company name. It can serve as his or his trademark as well, his company trademark. So it's both the company name and at the same time it's the trademark because it's attached to the product. It's printed on the product. The logo is printed. The beautiful logo is printed on the product. Now you have to register that logo. Number two, I was looking at the website of Aldrich and then I saw a moringa and other variations of the products. You have to have a trademark for each of those so that if anybody would come in and compete with you using the same, moringa or malunggay in the Philippines,
Yeah.
product or a VCO product, then you have your own distinction. You can distinguish yourself. This is VG Wellness product. You have to have a name for your moringa, a separate trademark for your moringa, a separate trademark for your VCO. And it's the same thing with restaurants. You have a nice name of a restaurant, which we call a service mark, not a trademark, because you are rendering services. And then your menu, you have to have a name of each of the menu that you you offer, especially if it's something innovative, it's something new, then you want people to understand or to think that this is your menu for that particular product.
Yeah, but I think one question here, Tony Negre, is that okay? I'm a U.S. manufacturer. I registered it in the Philippines. Okay, but who's going to take care of my trademark in the Philippines? Who's going to protect my trademark if somebody encroaches on my trademark
Mhm.
in Manila?
Good
What
question.
happens?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, it's your trademark, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to give that authority to your distributor. Okay, do this for me, because otherwise he'll probably, look for his own interest. You look for your own interest. And how do you do that? You look for a trademark attorney in the Philippines to represent you in the Philippines. And then that trademark attorney will register your trademark, will apply for registration with the Bureau of Trademarks. Once registered, you have the right, even if you're based in the US, you don't have to come in the Philippines. You can maintain your registration back in the US, but you have to be represented in the Philippines, and that representation is through your trademark attorney. Now, you have to be in the lookout. If someone is copying, then enforce your rights. Normally, what we
Uh-huh.
do initially is send a demand letter, what we call a cease and desist letter. Hey, this is a registered trademark of X. Stop using it, or we will sue. And sometimes there are two kinds that we send. Sometimes we almost always send a friendly letter. You know,
I like that. I like
because
that
most of this,
friendly letter.
the reason
I
for
like the
this,
term. I
Rudy,
like the term attorney. Friendly,
friendly
but
Letter.
letter.
you see
Yeah.
the letterhead. That really scares the wit out of you.
Okay,
Right?
let me jump in on that only because there's a practical thought that I just had. Because most of the people that I run into, I sometimes feel that that's not one of their priorities to do. And I'm not saying that they're wrong or they're right. I just noticed that they don't. And that's the scary
Mhm.
part, right? Because it already is a lot of, whether a lot of people know this, it's obviously you can Google this, but the U.S. with its economic power and all of that, they still tend to not want to export, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because they feel that there's a lot of already opportunities, such a big market. Why do I have to go? But I always look at the U.S. manufacturers, and I can see what their concern could be. Why there's not this sort of an ease of wanting to do business in other countries, because why, they're already here, right? But we they need to be educated that they need to deal with professionals like yourself to take care of those little, those things. Those are the things that bother me, because sometimes I think they don't want to go to that extreme because they don't think about that. They're just concerned, they're trying to get the products in, worried about if it's going to be compliant, but they don't worry about if somebody's going to rip off their trademark. But how do you know when you should actually make that a priority? Is there anything that you think about, Attorney Freddie, when it comes to that, like a particular company that they should do that right away?
Yes, in fact, even in the Philippines, you mentioned that that's how the mindset in the US of these businessmen. It's the same thing in the Philippines and elsewhere. They make IP or trademarks a list of their priority. But that's a problem, and often they come to us when there's a problem already. So my suggestion is from the get-go, from the planning stage of your business, you have to be aware. It's awareness, you know. You have to be aware of your intellectual property, including your trademarks, because it's a competitive advantage if you have that trademark. The reason why people are copying your trademark is because of your goodwill that you have already earned. They want to ride on the goodwill of, kilala na, the consumers already know about your product, and that's the time people start copying your product so that they can ride on the popularity of your product. So my suggestion is, before you get there, you really have to be aware, to be very conscious of your intellectual property, of your trademarks, and maintain it. As I mentioned early on, as you keep using your mark, the value appreciates, the goodwill appreciates. And for that reason, you really, really have to protect your trademark.
Mm-hmm. So, which is really true, Ferdinand. A lot of entrepreneurs will say, I want to bring my products into the Philippines, I want to, or the US, forget later, that's the least priority. But again, when you get the snag and say, oh, what did I do? And the worst part is that, like, okay, you registered your name because there are a lot of DIY, do it yourself, right? I mean, they're
Mhm.
trying to scrape some sense and here and there, or probably they just don't want to have a lawyer to be to because they're thinking, oh, it's expensive, blah blah
Expensive.
blah. But
Hmm.
later on, you realize you get a snag in the intellectual property office and say, oh, this name is not registrable, or you have to
Right,
submit,
right.
or finally abandoned. And they start crying and say, what do we do? Okay. So, what advice would you say to a lot of these entrepreneurs, like with this kind of mindset?
Right, right. Well, first, let me just comment on what you mentioned, Boots. That along the way you got a snag, and then it becomes more expensive. You know,
Oh.
because then you have a
Mhm.
problem to address. So my advice, Boots and Ferdy, is from the get go, you choose a proper mark, and then do this is very important step. Do an availability search.
Mhm.
You check with the database of the Bureau of Trademarks, the USPTO, the US Patent Trademark Office, if there's already one registered. Because you apply for registration and someone already registered it, then you cannot get it. Worse is if you have already launched your product and yet you cannot get the trademark. And yet you get the demand letter. Stop using my trademark from the registrant.
Mhm.
That's a no-no. So do your own trademark search, due diligence search on the availability of that trademark. It is a very, very important step, I must say.
Well, that's the reason why after you said that, I feel empowered now as a group because that is what we're doing. We're trying
Mm-hmm.
to create awareness of those little things because if you look at that whole thing, right, about the evolution of a business, especially they're successful now, they want to go local to global. They're just so concerned always about the, okay, how am I going to sell it? Is it going to be compliant, like I said? But they don't look at it that way. They don't think of it that way. So that's why these shows, and again, this may be something I'm just trying to promote, which I feel very passionate about, is that you're able to just address that right now because they're not going to think of that. Let's be honest, they're not. And until something that like happens, and
Right.
at least there should be a system where you're constantly trying to bring that into the
Mhm.
discussion everywhere we go. Always think about the legal aspect, but don't let it be the one that deters you from doing it, from going from local to global. But just be aware that you do need to check that box,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
But
It is.
attorney Ferdy, what about the domain? The website.
Oh,
Like
okay. You
planet63.com. Do I need to register that?
Mhm.
um okay. What is a domain name, Boots? It's your address on the internet.
Yeah.
Actually, it
Right.
represents zeros and ones. But if I am a consumer, if I wanted to buy your product, I look for that on the domain on the internet, and so I
Yes.
look for your domain name, your address on the net. It's actually an address like any physical address, but it also serves as your identity. And therefore, if you're identified on the net, that's your trademark. Think booking.com. It's a very,
Uh
very
huh.
big case, you see. People are saying it's generic because it's booking, You book a hotel, you book, but the US Supreme Court in that case, ruled that booking.com as a site, people learned to associate it with this site, particular site, and it therefore became a trademark, a service mark. So yes, you need to register your domain name as a trademark as well.
Whew.
Very important.
Ferdinand. I'm getting. I'm getting overloaded with this talk of attorney Ferdy, and and really this serves as a reminder, as a sort of a wake up call for a lot of entrepreneurs, both here in the U.S. Right? Because
Yeah.
like we don't want any hassle, we don't want any snags. I mean, we
Hmm.
want to do business, we want to move forward,
Exactly.
right? So I think trying to save some few cents, it's not really going to work, but really get the right professionals, because in the internet, in the social media, you get a lot of people doing a lot of self-help or psychiatric advice for trademark, and really a lot of people follow that. And I always say, do you know that person? Do you know the background? But if you don't, get a professional. And really, that's what we are here after, right? I mean, anybody can go and export the product in the Philippines
Hmm.
and really get into a lot of trouble. And that's the reason why we have this local to global. And by the way, Ferdy, let me just give you an update about our global expansion program, right?
You're so good. I was going to
Oh,
tell them about that. You beat me to it.
I, you know what? I'm so excited, Ferdinand, Attorney Ferdy F2, because we have this Cal State. I got it right, right? I got it
Mhm.
right, Ferdinand.
House state.
Cal State of San Bernardino and Planet 63, the handsome Ferdinand F1, and myself, my group, GMB, and we work together, and an entrepreneur in the Philippines wanting to go to the US, we are helping that person or that entity without leaving the shores of the Philippines. Why? Because Cal State has students, intern, who will study, who will really check all the things like the trademark perhaps before you even step into the US. And that's something that we are now emphasizing, global expansion program. And likewise, we're also having here in the Philippines. So I guess friends watching this or going to watch a replay,
Mhm.
don't miss this opportunity. It's something that I'm so proud, because we're just less than 2 weeks, 2 weeks old that we're doing. I'm part of the show, and our guests are now getting in touch with our experts.
Mhm.
Our guests from the Philippines are also getting in touch with the US experts. And really, I'm so happy things are getting into a positive note. Not COVID, but positive moving forward.
I always love that.
All
I
right.
always love that about you, Butch. You can, you're very witty. I love it. But I was going to tell you that I wanted to kind of latch on to what you said about what we're all trying to do as a whole, in terms of educating, entertaining, and hopefully at the end of the day, we're helping somebody make a sale, because at the end of the day, you got to make something happen in terms
Yeah.
of trade, because we're trying to help create livelihoods on both sides of the country,
Yeah.
obviously, and that's what we're trying to do. But the show, like you said, again, re-emphasize the fact that with what we're trying to do is trying to educate it with the global expansion, partnership in terms of collaboration with research with the students. So those are the things that we're doing. So hopefully, what Attorney Freddie Negre has come across is that there are a lot of things to think about, but at the same time, you don't let it deter for what you want to do. You just have to be aware of it, because that's the important thing. Because there are a lot of things to do. Let's face that.
Right. Right.
Right, everybody. But I want to give Attorney Negre the last word in terms of any sort of wisdom before we end the show, and we're going to end the show right at this spot. So, Attorney Ferdy, tell us, if you have any words of wisdom, whether it's just something that you believe in personally, leaving the show, or you want to give a last minute advice. That's up to you. I'm giving you the floor, so to speak.
Thank you. Thanks again, Ferdy and Boots, for having me here. Let me say it again, that your trademark is your asset. Invest in it. Number two, stay hungry. Hungry for learning. The revenue will come. Stay hungry. Stay hungry for learning. And stay passionate, If you're passionate on what you do, you will succeed. So on that note, again, thank you, Ferdy, and thank you, Boots, for having me here. Really appreciate. Get help.
Yeah,
Collaborate.
Attorney Ferdy, I'm going to see you in the show in about a week. Obviously, we're going to review a gentleman or a company called YourCellParts.com. They furnish or resell refurbished phones or iPhones and iPads and things like that. That they want to bring these products to the Philippines. And then on the other side, we have a fashionista. She manufactures fashion accessories where fashion meets culture. That's her slogan, from a company called Modela Filipina. And I'm excited for her to be on the show. But again, without all of you guys giving the credibility that the show needs to sort of push it out there and saying that this is a good show to watch, especially if you're into trying to from local to global. Boots, do you have any parting words before I sign off?
Well, I like what always say, keep on fighting, keep your head up. Don't you let your nose dive down, but always stay safe. Wear
Great.
the mask, and again, together we can all survive. Collaborate.
Correct. That's the key word. Attorney Ferdy, thank you so much for being a part of the show again. And Boots, my co-host, Philippine franchise guru, big guy. I'm glad that you guys are all both here. Now, I want everyone who's watching the show right now to please subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified when our next Planet 63 from local to global show is live again. And then also stay tuned for more segments of the from local to global the experts edition, because you get to know the people in the back, because the show is only 1 hour and you don't get to really know the panel experts. And look, we got to know Attorney Ferdy today, how smart he is, and what an amazing name that is, Ferdinand.
Say that again.
Say it again, Ferdinand.
Yeah, with that being said, have a great rest of the week. And I want to tell everyone, or I want everyone to go, let's go global. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, we're off the air, right?